All right, thank you so much for making your way back, ladies and gentlemen. We will be moving on to our next segment of today, Finance in the Future, Sustainable Investment and Risk Management. And we have a power-packed panel ready for you to join us on stage to provide you with some meaningful insights for us to progress forward. Now, may I have the pleasure to invite Tuan Amiruddin bin Tuan Sulaiman, Project Manager of Sustainable Finance Control Union Malaysia, to chair this session. And ladies and gentlemen, our esteemed panelists for this segment that will join us on stage, Dr. Gary Teixeira, Advisory Committee of Red Plus Finance Framework Advisory Committee and Director of Climate Governance Malaysia. Next up, we have Mr. Arshad Noval Othman, CIMB Islamic Bank Berhad. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to join us on stage. We also have Mr. Kevin Sean Fernandez, Vice President of Strategic Partnerships and Innovation for Alliance Bank Malaysia Berhad. And last but certainly not least, we have Ms. Madalena Mohamad, Director of Sustainability Unit, Bank Negara Malaysia. All right, I'll be handing over the floor to Tuan Amiruddin.
Is everyone in? But anyway, we can just start since we are a bit ahead of time. But anyway, Assalamualaikum, good morning, hello and welcome to everyone. We have an exciting session lined up for you today with some exceptional speakers ranging from sustainable financing, manufacturing, energy, agriculture, of course, and also construction. Whether you are here to gain knowledge, share ideas, or simply be inspired, you are in the right place. As we move into today's discussion, I must say how humble and privileged I feel in the presence of such accomplished individuals. Our panelists bring a wealth of experience, knowledge, a unique perspective that I'm certain will inspire and enlighten us all. For anyone in the financial sustainability field, these names truly need no introduction, but for the benefit of everyone here, let me take a moment properly to introduce them. During my brief introduction, these panelists will also share their slides and also giving a bit of introduction of what have they been doing in sustainable financing. We can start with the BNM slide.
All right, while our team takes a few moments to get the right slides up on stage, I would also like to invite all of you to join us in asking your questions towards the panelists. Anything that might have come up while they are speaking, we would like to invite you to also put in your questions so that it can help you address them as well. There will be a Slido slide that will be coming up later on so that you can scan and get into it, and we would love to hear your questions. Just give us a few more moments while we get the slides up on stage. Thank you so much for your patience. And then back to you, Tuan Amiruddin.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. So first of the panelists here is Madalena Mohamad, Director of Sustainability Unit from BNM. She has more than 30 years experience in area of central banking, financial stability and crisis management, and also Islamic finance. Before moving to sustainability, she also co-chaired the capacity building effort of the Network for Greening the Financial System, a global coalition of more than 110 central bank and financial supervisory authorities. A bit of herself, she does like paintings, all on canvas, and she has some collection of painting herself, quite a number from emerging artists to help them gain confidence and experience. Maybe before we can start with the slide, a bit of ice-breaking question. Do you prefer to be a collector or a painter yourself?
I think collector and admirer rather than a painter myself.
All right, then I think we can start with the introduction from BNM.
Right. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning to everyone. I'm not sure, but the slides are actually not showing on the screen. Or is it there? Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Well, I think there's been a lot of mention this morning about the shift towards net zero, and this is actually an area where Malaysia, as a country, we can also stand to benefit from this shift, not only in terms of economic growth, but also in terms of creation of new employment opportunities, higher income jobs, and which would also then help to improve the livelihoods of our society. Now, for us to reach, or for us to actually realize this net zero agenda, definitely funding is going to be very critical. And just to give you some perspective, and I'm pretty sure you would already know this, just to transition the energy sector alone, we require at least 1.3 trillion ringgit up until 2050, and that's a huge amount. And this is actually where financial sector comes into the picture, and the central bank has actually been actively involved in driving this agenda as well. And the main reason is because when we look at the financial sector, we do see them playing two key roles. So one is in terms of catalyzing and also enabling the transition by, through the solutions, financial solutions that they provide to their customers in terms of the advisory services. And I'm pretty sure you'll hear more about it later on, because I do have the private sector reps here on the panel. And on the other hand, it's also about them, being resilient themselves. And this is really about building their own capacity, their own capability towards for them to be able to manage the risks associated with climate change. So as I mentioned earlier, so it's been high on our on the bank's agenda, and it's really key because as a country, for us to achieve net zero, we want to be able to achieve that in a what we call an orderly manner and in a just manner. We want to make sure that we actually get there by not causing any dislocations within the economy or even within the society. So when we launch or when we release our financial sector blueprint, this is actually a blueprint or a master plan that we issue regularly. And when we, the current one that we have, financial sector blueprint, which takes the period of 2022 to 2026, finance for sustainability is one of the key pillars. And and one of the strategic and one of the 5 strategic trusts of the financial sector blueprint, and that's really about financial sector, facilitating the orderly and just transition. And to put this into action, the central bank, Bank Negara, has actually been actively laying down the foundation for this to happen. And one of the key things which we have done is to create what we call to set up the Joint Committee on Climate Change. Now, this is actually a platform where the financial regulators, Bank Negara, as well as the Securities Commission, we partner. And I have to emphasize the word partner. We partner with the financial sector. So yes, they are our regulators, but on this particular topic, we partner with financial institutions to co-create toolkits for them. And again, for them to be able to play the role that I mentioned earlier. I'm not going to go into the details. I think the slides will be circulated. And one of the key areas that we've been focusing a lot, and I mentioned about a just transition, is really about supporting the SMEs, because the SMEs are the one which is under-resourced, the ones which require a lot of help in terms of capacity and capability. So there's been quite a bit of focus on the SMEs, and this is actually some of the things which we have done. I think that's all I have. well, this is just some of the publications for reference.
All right. Thank you so much, madam. So we can come back on that during our panel question. So next in line is, I think he's no need introduction. I think everyone knows him, but for the benefit of everyone, I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Gary Teixeira, Red Plus Finance Framework Advisory Committee. Gary is an adjunct associate professor at the Asia School of Business in collaboration with MIT Sloan Management, and also a director and council member at the Climate Governance Malaysia, the Malaysian chapter of the Climate Governance Initiative of the World Economic Forum. A bit of himself, Gary is happiest when on his bicycle and also when he's making music, but not at the same time. And it will be weird if you're making music on bicycle, isn't it? Yeah, a bit of breaking question. What is your dream cycling route anywhere in the world?
Possibly the Smoky Mountains in the US, maybe the Appalachians, some very interesting landscapes around there. But it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you. Go ahead with the slides, please. I don't have a lot of time this morning, and this hat that I'm wearing today, as a matter of the RFFAC, the basically Red Plus Forest Finance Framework Advisory Committee, is one that I wear somewhat less often. But the Malaysia Forest Finance people, as you might expect, are at the COP, and some of them haven't come back yet. But are the slides up? I think we're still looking at the QR code, right? Okay. So I can begin anyway. So the idea really stems from the fact that nature-based solutions are a part of addressing climate change. Forests have multiple roles, not only as carbon sinks, but also as a stock of carbon. So the protection of forests is vital. Without protection, without financing, it's going to be almost impossible to even maintain forests because of the amount of monitoring required. You'd be surprised at the number of illegal incursions that often occur in our forest reserves, not just to get timber, but to get other types of forest products. So the idea really is that the forestry sector is a very important backstop for any of the mitigation actions that the country undertakes, and it also provides an adaptation service in the sense that it helps protect our mitigation actions and reduce the loss and damage associated with extreme weather events. Forests absorb a lot of extreme weather. Right?
A bit of technical issue.
Well, okay, so let me just continue. The idea really is that when we started talking about performance-based payments, we were actually talking about something that was not generating carbon credits. We were talking about non-market mechanisms. And REDD+, or reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, was a part of that non-market mechanism where you'd actually be paying to conserve forests in their native form. The negotiations for REDD+ began many years ago, I think 2004, 2005. And one of the earliest hurdles that we had to overcome was actually to get buy-in from indigenous groups who were very concerned that forest use for climate purposes would actually alienate them. But having convinced the indigenous groups that this was possible, the negotiations on REDD+ continued. And now we find ourselves in a situation where we have the Malaysia Forest Fund developing and putting out two distinct instruments, you might call them. All right. So the first instrument will be the forest conservation credits. These are truly part of the non-market mechanism. Essentially, they are performance-based payments, for which the Malaysia Forest Fund acts as a kind of matchmaker to pool together forest projects that require financing on the one hand, and on the other hand, to pool together donors. So even though funds might not be available in large enough pool, we can, by pooling, find or assemble funds at a sufficient scale to get this going. Okay, I'm so glad we've got the slides up now. Let me move ahead to where I'm supposed to be. So we have the market mechanisms, as you see on the left, and the non-market mechanisms on the right. Some of the take-up from the market mechanisms can be seen on the left, things like Corsia, which is under the ICAO, and then things like carbon taxes, which might be part of either a domestic carbon tax or even a foreign carbon tax. Okay, Singapore companies that are under the Singapore carbon tax might decide that they need credits for compliance. On the right side, you see the non-market mechanisms. Now, these are the areas where we'll actually be talking about, because we're actually further along in developing the instrument for that. So the two instruments are here. RED Plus is the general basket of instruments, which began as non-market, but as negotiations progressed, became different. We do have the forest conservation certificates above, they are non-market, and then the forest carbon offsets at the bottom. They are at slightly different levels of maturity at this point in time. When it comes to the highlights, we really want to be sure that we get this environmental integrity thing down. So transparency, disclosure in the registry, accountability, separate accounting for all of these schemes. The addition and recognition of ecosystem services, very, very important. Like I said, forests have multiple functions, and all of them are equally important. Independent third-party verification, certification, also once again to ensure rigorous standards. And then this is where we try to tailor the financing. We pair, we blend small donors with large donors to accumulate the threshold levels of financing necessary to get this done. And all of the people, and they are truly donors in this regard. This is not something that's based on climate responsibility, finance responsibility, but because they are donors, they do get a tax incentive regardless of the amount that they donate. Now, right now, we have at present 14 applications, 7 states, and the funding requirements for the proposals that we've received already amount to 79 million. We are now in the process of pooling together the financing to make this work. So these are the forest conservation certificates, the non-market mechanism processes. If you look at the other markets for carbon credit services from forests, we actually see that around the world there are already 27 government-based crediting systems. 14 are national, 14 are subnational, there's 28, and then 1 is regional. There are also a number of others under development. I don't have time to go through each of them individually, but please feel free to look at the slide. The 4 components of this forest carbon offset, and this is an offset, so it will be part of the market mechanism, the guidelines, the rules, the accounting methodologies, very, very important, the verification processes, and then what ties and keeps track of everything, the registry. All right. We are in a process where we're actually moving very quickly with this forest carbon offset. The very important players and partners we are working with include, of course, the TGO, which is Thailand's greenhouse gas organization, Gold Standard, Vera, and others. All right, but partnerships always very important for collaboration. And then finally, market acceptance. If you do not have the credentials for market acceptance, you're essentially dead in the water. This is essentially where we've come so far. We're working on all of these pieces sort of separately, but ultimately the goal is to get the carbon offsets accepted by the end of this year. If you look at the list of materials here, we've got all of these guidelines that we're currently producing, and the deadline for them actually is going to go to the working group in December of this year. So the technical working group is then going to go over all of these things, and then we should be in a position to make more announcements on the FCOs. But the FCC is already out there and happy to answer any questions moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gary. I think we will come back on the FCC and also FCO later on during panel discussion. Can we bring up Alliance Bank slide first before we start? Right, so I'm going to introduce next on the panel. We have here Kevin Sean Fernandez, Vice President of Strategic Partnership and Innovation at Alliance Bank. He has been in banking for over 20 years, working at both local and foreign banks in consumer and business making space. Outside of work, he spent his free time hiking, enjoying nature-based activities. Maybe he get along well with Dr. Gary later, and cheering for Liverpool. He's the nature-loving Liverpool fan. So, Kevin, who's one person from the Liverpool team that you might want to take on the hike, and why?
Thank you. I mean, interesting question. Well, I suppose if it's in the team and you didn't give a time frame, so I will go back in time, and it will probably be the previous manager, Jurgen Klopp. I think what excited me is the way he transformed. I think transformation is a very exciting trait, and you know, it's great to be able to, along that hike, to get his insights and understand what he's done, right? All the various initiatives in sports science, dietary plans, and even strategies in terms of how the team play. I suppose that's the short answer.
Okay, good to hear that. Then we can continue to your slide.
Sure. All right. Good morning, everyone. I've got a couple of slides to go through. I've got a clock running here as well, so to add on to the pressure. On top of that, I got B&M regulator here as well, watching over what I think the both of us are going to say. So I'm going to keep it concise, and I'm going to share a little bit about what Alliance Bank does in terms of our program. It's called the Sustainability Impact Program. And basically, we look at it as 3 A's. The first A being advocacy, and that's where we go around communicating the importance of sustainability to a lot of SMEs out there, right? A lot of misconceptions that it's cost intensive, that it doesn't tie back to bottom line, that it's mere compliance checkbox that they need to tick. So I think that's where we do a lot of work, working with partners in various research booklets that we have come up. I'll share one a little bit later. But besides that, it's participating in a lot of roundtable, a lot of events. Now the second A is where we work with 2 key partners to basically help us provide a differentiated value proposition. As a bank, I think we talk about ESG. We have our own pressures as well in terms of what we need to do as an organization. But more importantly, we're trying to see how we can help our customers and even the community as well to advance on this. And we can't do it alone. And I think a lot of the speakers before this also talked about partnership and how important it is. So that's where I'll share a little bit about 2 partners that we work very closely with to move in this space. And the third A being answers. Answers here, I think if you look at answers, there are two points here. One being the ability to connect with a lot of green tech solution providers. As you want to transition, you want reputable, sound companies that can help you in this journey. And I think that's then leads to the final piece where the bank comes in to provide financing. Now, to just quickly jump into some of the partners that we work with. Well, for advocacy, we do a bit of work with Invest Sarawak, going around the state to build capacity building for the local SMEs. Besides that, it's on research booklets that we work with SME Corp and Monash University. And the idea here is to be able to, for us as a bank to understand as well, right? Where and what's the state of ESG among Malaysian SMEs? What are the challenges? What are the motivations? What help do they need? And we use that as insights then to craft the advisory piece. The advisory piece is where we work with Bursa Malaysia to help a lot of PLCs in their journey, right? Tied back to FTSE for Good Index, or it could be with the new and recently launched CSI platform, which was shared a little bit a while ago. For SMEs, then the partner that we collaborate closely with is UN Global Compact, and a lot of the work is on being able to provide a lot of tools and resources into the market, right? And of course, to be able to do this at no cost. I think that's one of the challenges that we continuously seek to overcome. And finally, as I shared, answers come in the form of banking support. Financing usually leads the way, and connecting to various green tech solution providers. Now, I'm just going to quickly flash a little bit of research that came out last year, and this was something to give us a perspective of where we started from, right? When it came to ESG, no surprise, majority of SMEs 1 year plus ago were I think, a little bit unsure. What was it about? How does it help them, right? I mean, I think there's a lot of stats on the slide, but if I could frame this into a situation, if you got 10 business owners, SMEs in a room with you, 1 out of 10 of them would basically tell you that he's used ESG and embedded the elements and initiatives into their business operations and strategy and benefited from it. 2 out of 10 would have somewhat embedded some strategies, either consciously or unconsciously. 3 out of 10 are thinking about it, have not started, and the balance have not even thought about it. Now, this was 12 months plus ago. But what has happened is we've done a follow-up research this year, right, which is going to be launched very soon. And I'll give you a little bit of a sneak peek. Those numbers have flipped, right? I think with all the work that's been done by various parties on awareness, a lot of the SMEs now are on board. They understand the word ESG. They know that there are benefits to it. It comes from a function of either client is communicating that to them, or the markets that they serve. There are requirements that they need to meet. Sorry. So we see this as a way of how we understand what the market is, and from here then develop solutions. And how we develop solutions, I'm just going to quickly just do a quick flash up of the QR code. If you're interested to get a quick snapshot of this will just give you a bit of access to the full report. And you can get this from the organizers as well later. I'm just going to jump on into our partnership with UN Global Compact. That's where we work on capacity building requirements, helping SMEs to basically understand the implications, the standards, the frameworks in the market, distill the jargon, start from very basic ground zero point of understanding how and what it is, and how you can frame and put your own pathway as an SME, right, for your own company. I'm not going to go through a lot of the details in there, but one of the tools that we've co-developed, and I want to spend a bit more time on this, is a tool called Progress. It's actually a climate assessment tool. Now, going back to the research, if you would have seen, one of the areas SMEs had trouble with is basically understanding where to start, what to do, who's there to help them. So that's stemming from that research, we developed this tool. It's a digital climate assessment tool to enable them to basically, in a very simplified form, generate a climate report, right? It looks at 3 areas from the perspective of climate governance, GHG emission reduction, and the third point being business strategy integration. What are they doing? And from there, it gives them a level, an indicator of where they stand, right? It ranges from laggard to beginner all the way up to leader. So it's a 5 simple level. Now, what's more interesting on the right-hand side, you would see that there's also an action plan, a simple action plan on what they can get started on to help them start on some improvement initiatives. A little bit about the framework. So the framework for this is developed with, of course, the ISO 14011 EMS standards, as well as 14064, the GHG. And it's been overlaid with CCPT guiding principles as well to make it relevant and impactful. Consists of 39 questions, yes or no based, to keep it very simple, language-wise as well in terms of communication. And we've rolled this out for the last probably 8 months now, and we've covered about 1,000 SMEs in the country so far, right? And help them with develop their own transition plan. We've recently launched one more feature to this, which is a corporate dashboard. And the idea is to help corporate supply chains, right? To help the corporates have a helicopter view of how their suppliers are performing. What are some of their gaps? What are some of their ESG progression journeys, right? So that's something new as well that has been launched to further enrich the insights for corporates. I'm going to just quickly flash on this. I think Puan covered this as well, right? I think there are a lot of financing schemes in the country. Bank Negara has enabled multiple schemes for various sectors, right? From manufacturing, ICT, right? Those who are on the IR 4.0 roadmap as well. And all the schemes are curated and catered to provide the right support to SMEs in the form of really making sure interest rates are kept low so that it's very cost effective, making sure that the loans are of a longer tenor, right? I think before these schemes, banks do not lend usually anything more than 7 years to SMEs, right? We're always risk adverse, right? And I think that's where partners like CGC, SJPP have come in to provide a lot of the guarantees and to enable us then to provide these schemes on a longer tenor, right? 10 years, 15 years for collateral-free loans for SMEs, probably unheard of a few years ago. And I think in this space, it's going to develop even more in 2025. A lot more schemes are going to come up. At the bottom is just a couple more larger financing schemes for larger corporates, sustainability-linked loans and green bonds as well. GTFS, I think T.S. Shamsul spoke about it just now, so I'm gonna skip that one, and I think that's it. Come to the end of my session. I'm gonna hand over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kevin. I think there's question coming about how can the bank help SME in financing the ESG, also helping the SMEs. I think the Alliance Bank's slide most probably covered that part. So last but not least, I have my good friend here from CIMB Islamic Bank, Arshad Noval Osman, Head of Sustainable Finance Group Islamic Banking. He also in charge of accelerating sustainable finance and sustainability practice. Prior to this role, Arshad worked as a corporate banking relationship manager with experience in covering local large corporates, multinational companies, GLC companies, and also development financial institution. During his free time, I think everyone started asking why this guy is very capable about everyone free time. Arshad enjoy watching romantic comedies and docu-series on Netflix during his free time. On that note, what will be a docu-series you recommend to everyone?
Thank you for the opening question, Tuan Amir. So, Assalamualaikum and good morning. Thank you to Control Union for the opportunity to speak today. So to answer Tuan Amir's question, I know perhaps in the audience you might think, okay, a sustainability person watching docu-series on Netflix, it must be something related to the environment, forest, ocean, so on and so forth. Or on the contrary, the docu-series or the type of docu-series that I watch are more historical. So if I had to name one that is my favorite, I'd say Alexander. And why is that? Leadership. Now, I'll tie this to sustainability as a start to my presentation. So similar to IR Shamsul, the CEO of MGTC, I just got back from Baku as well, COP29. I actually spoke on the same panel, Green Cities, with IR Shamsul. Julian from Bursa Malaysia, I also spoke on another panel with Bursa Malaysia, Dr. Winnie, the head of carbon markets. And this one is on the carbon credits, which is a market mechanism that Dr. Gary covered earlier. So the point that I'm trying to get at on how this ties to my favorite docu-series being Alexander, I attended a session at the World Bank Pavilion or the World Bank booth, and there were 4 speakers, 2 of whom, one was the head of the World Bank, the other was the head of the IMF. Now, another person that was there was the CEO of Masdar, which is a large renewable energy company of the UAE. And a strong message that he concluded with was no leadership, no business. So that's why in sustainability, leadership is important, especially the G element. So just to tie it to what Puan Madalina had mentioned earlier, that leadership is demonstrated by the regulators. So for Bank Negara Malaysia, we have the climate change and principle-based taxonomy. We also have the climate risk measurement and scenario analysis. So those are the 2 big policies for banking. For Securities Commission, they've already established the SRI, or the Sustainable and Responsible Investment. And more recently, in November last year, specifically for the Islamic capital markets, the Maqasid al-Sharia guidance, or the objectives of the Sharia guidance, which I will get to at the end of my presentation. And of course, not to forget the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability. So we heard YB Nik Nazmi before the Malaysian delegation flew to COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan, launching the National Climate Change Policy 2.0. So again, leadership playing an important role in sustainability. So yes, as Amir mentioned earlier, I'm the head of sustainable finance at CIMB Islamic. What I do is the Sharia-based implementation of the sustainability agenda at CIMB Group. So hence, I'll be speaking from what we do at CIMB Group. Now, as you can see on the first slide here, our sustainability commitment at CIMB is to be a sustainability leader in ASEAN, and we quantitatively measure ourselves, and that is through the S&P Global Corporate Sustainability Assessment. Our target is to be in the top quartile by 2024, which is the end of this year. Thankfully, we achieved that at the end of last year. Now, our sustainability commitment can be split into 3 pillars. So as you can see, climate change, responsible banking, and social impact. For climate change, we've committed net zero, scope 1 and scope 2, our operations by 2030, and net zero, including scope 3, which mainly includes our financing and investments portfolio, by 2050. Now, on the second pillar you see in the middle, with regards to responsible banking, we look at it from 2 perspectives: risks and opportunities. So for risks, it'll be about minimizing harm. So you can see there, we're exiting coal by 2040, and we have already introduced a no deforestation, no peat, and no exploitation commitment, or NDPE for short. Now, on the opportunity side, you can see there, we're maximizing positive impact. That's where we have committed to mobilize 100 billion of sustainable finance by the end of 2024. And a part of that comes from the Islamic banking business. Last but not least, on the third pillar, with regards to social impact, that's where we have made a 150 million commitment for CSR over 5 years, so that'd be 30 million per year, and we have also committed 100,000 volunteer hours annually. So those are the 3 pillars in order for us to fulfill our sustainability commitment. Now, going to what I had said earlier, briefly, maximizing positive impact and minimizing harm, focus should be at the bottom part of the slide. For maximizing positive impact, we do it through our green, social, and sustainable impact products and services. With regards to, so that's on maximizing positive impact. For minimizing harm, it'll be through our group sustainable financing policy and sector guide. So I'll talk a bit more about that. I know the slide is busy with regards to maximizing positive impact, and these are excerpts from our sustainable finance framework. There are 2 key takeaways over here, and that being the 2 types of sustainable finance products. First being the use of proceeds, and second being sustainability linked. So when it comes to use of proceeds, every ringgit or dollar lent will be used for green, social, and sustainable purposes. So that's where you would see on the right-hand side of the slide, the sectors that fall under green, social, and sustainable. So green, for example, renewable energy; social, for example, affordable housing. Now, the second instrument that we have is sustainability linked. And what does that mean? You can use the ringgit lent for any purpose. However, we will attach a sustainability performance target on that lending facility. That sustainability performance target could be your decarbonization pathway over a certain period of time. And with that, if you achieve the annual decarbonization or sustainability performance targets, that's where at CIMB we will give an interest rate, or from an Islamic perspective, a profit rate rebate. This slide is also busy, but the main takeaway from this is at CIMB, we have the use of proceeds and sustainability linked products for all our customer segments: corporates, SMEs, and of course, not to forget the individuals. Now, for the individuals, we do both the environmental and social financing. For the environmental side, we have green mortgages as well as EV or electric vehicle financing. On the social side, we also have affordable housing financing. Now, just to close off our approach, I spoke about the opportunities, just a bit on the risks. So here we have our sustainability due diligence. We start with the basic sustainability due diligence. If the customer is deemed to be high risk, which includes being in a high risk sector, that's where we have the enhanced sustainability due diligence. And if need be, there is an escalation all the way up to our senior management and even board, for that matter, to deliberate on sustainability matters for transactions. So our approach at CIMB is client engagement comes first. So on the right-hand side, we will try to not reject, because we will always go for recommend with action plans if there are any gaps in the environmental and social sustainability, or environmental and social due diligence that we do as part of that process. So again, we work with our clients, we won't reject, we want to work towards the action plans that we agree with the clients. Now, with regards to the Islamic angle that I spoke of earlier, a key milestone was the publishing of the Maqasid al-Sharia guidance by the Securities Commission Malaysia. And for me, as a person who started in Islamic finance about 10 years ago, the discussion about Maqasid Sharia has been conceptual. So this document from Securities Commission, again, going back to my earlier point on regulators being solid leadership in driving sustainability, this document is prescriptive in terms of how the financial sector in Malaysia can implement the Maqasid al-Sharia, or the objectives of the Sharia. So within the document, you would see 15 principles there. So what you see in front of you is the mapping of how CIMB Islamic, in partnership with CIMB Group, fulfills all 15 of the principles. So that is what we do at CIMB Group, which includes the Sharia-based implementation of sustainability from a strategy and policy perspective. So I'll leave my contact information as the last line in case you'd like to further the conversation after this session. Back to you, Tuan Ami. Thank you.
Thank you, Arshad. And also thank you everyone for the introduction of what have been your organization have been doing in sustainable financing. So we're going to jump right to the question. But first question will be towards BNM point. How does Bank Negara CCPT, or principle-based taxonomy, influence the integration of ESG in the Malaysia financial sector?
Thanks. I think I would say that it has actually helped to spur and accelerate the industry's response towards the E component, the environment component, and this is in 4 different areas or ways. First is by providing a common language, a common way of classifying activities. So when we issued the taxonomy back in 2021, when we look around the financial sector, our own financial sector, it's actually a very new concept. It's a very new thing. What is ESG? What is climate finance? What is sustainable finance? All these jargons, and there's a need for the financial sector to actually have this common understanding and common language, not only when they engage with each other, but primarily when they engage with their customers. So we do need that common language. And I was actually hoping, Arshad, in your sorry, this is a regulator talking. No, you would have actually mentioned also about the value-based intermediation, because in the context of Malaysia, it's the Islamic banks, that actually started this journey, and they have actually issued the sectoral guides, which is actually a document which we overlay or we use to alongside the taxonomy. The other one is, we've seen how the taxonomy has also become an impetus for financial institutions, in supporting decarbonization. So you've heard, Arshad and Kevin, both of them talk about the kind of solutions they have come up with, the kind of engagements that they have made with their customers, and partly, I wouldn't say solely, but partly it has actually been driven by the taxonomy. And Kevin talked about, sorry, not Kevin, Arshad talked about 100 billion being committed. And when we look at the industry as a whole, when we look at it as at end of last year, the industry as a whole has actually committed more than 240 billion for purposes of ESG up to the year 2026. Now, the third area is, it does provide a tool for financial institutions to build resilience. Now, and when we talk about building climate resilience, it's not just about their own operations, but more so, and also, the resilience of their clients. So it's a, the taxonomy has 5 classifications, and using the 5 classifications, financial institutions engage with their clients and use that to initiate change in mindset. People typically think that, you're talking about ESG, you're talking about sustainability, is just a buzzword. They don't fully appreciate the importance of doing that. So the CCPT helps to guide the financial institutions when they engage with their customers. And the final part is on disclosures and I would say that the CCPT also helps in terms of reducing or minimizing the risk of greenwashing, because there is actually a proper framework that helps, in terms of classifying activities, and this is actually being consistently applied across the financial sector.
Thank you, Puan. I think this is also a thing that I've done previously during my working at the bank, where you need to classify them to identify whether or not are in a watch list or transitioning or whatnot. But maybe I can further this question to Kevin about the CCPT. I think we look at your slide in terms of how the platform, I think the progress platform, how does that platform actually improve your clients' performance, and also how does that tie to CCPT, and also which classification activities financed by the bank, especially on those in high emitting sector or high sensitive sectors per se.
Yeah, thank you, Ami. And I think just following up from what Puan shared as well, I think CCPT has really helped a lot of the financial institutions. It provides us with a strategy, a clear way in terms of how we approach the market, how we're going to classify the economic activities of our customers, right? And of course, all banks, all financial institutions need to get this right. It needs to be standardized, and that's how the journey is progressing. Introduction of the taxonomy, being able to classify them correctly, and I think now where we are heading to is we are actually sitting down with some of our clients who don't have a favorable rating. I think if you're familiar with CCPT classification, it starts with C1, C2, C3, C5, based on climate mitigation, climate adaptation, climate transitioning, right? A lot of guiding principles. I'm not going to get into the policy when the expert is sitting next to me here. So, but basically, right, those who are in the C5A, right, they are actually doing business. The bank is financing some elements of the business, but this business activity has harm to the environment, right? And there's no plan to address. That's that basic classification of C5A. So what we're doing is basically sitting down with these customers and help them generate a plan. I think the first thing that we do is help them identify the risk, right? The taxonomy kinds of very clearly specify the areas you need to look into, right? In terms of pollution, efficient use of resources, your impact to biodiversity, right? And with that, we're able then to help them identify the risk. Now, besides identifying the risk, we provide them options in terms of what they can do to address the risk, right? And again, it has to be guided by the business owner. The business needs to decide what's the right way to approach it, what's the time frame, right? In terms of, is it going to take something more of a short term or is it more of a long term play, right? Again, they define, and again, how much that ties back to how much resources they can be allocated to implement that initiative. Besides just that, there's also metrics that need to be set, right? It's not just about picking an initiative and picking a timeline, but measurement is important as well, right? If you're going to do this, then what is your measurement? Is it a reduction in carbon emission? Is it less tonnage or waste that's going to be generated? And what I'm saying is all tying back to how we are using the taxonomy to guide us to develop practical solutions, right? Practical solutions, sitting with our customers, helping them come up with a plan so that eventually, as they embark on this, we are able then to reduce our portfolio as well that are in the C5A category. So that's basically a summary of that.
All right, thank you, Kevin. So I'm going to move a bit to Arshad, and after that, I'm going to go to Dr. Gary. So Arshad, with the IMB Islamic's growing commitment to sustainability, can you highlight a bit some of key projects where Islamic finance has driven positive environmental or social outcomes?
Thanks for preempting my answer, Puan Madalina, on value-based intermediation. So that was a good introduction. So just to give a background, value-based intermediation was what Bank Negara Malaysia had introduced back in 2017. And it was strategic because it was the fastest way BNM could inject sustainability into the banking system, given that Islamic banks operate based on the Sharia and that there is an alignment between the Sharia as well as sustainability principles. So VBI, CIMB Islamic was one of the 6 founding partners. Now, after I arrived from Baku Monday morning, I actually went to the IBIM office or the IBIM boardroom to attend a meeting on redefining VBI, right? Because Islamic banks, given that BNM has introduced CCPT, CRMSA, we need to redefine or think about what VBI 2.0 is, because BNM had strategically achieved injecting sustainability into the banking system and crystallized it through CCPT and CRMSA. So at IBIM, we are discussing what VBI 2.0 will be, and I'll get to that in a bit. Now, with regards to VBI, not only is it implemented by Islamic banks, I can say for sure at CIMB Group, we take into account the VBI sectoral guides, and recently there was a review by IBIM, which is the Association for Islamic Banking and Financial Institutions, on the 6 sectoral guides from the first 2 cohorts, and CIMB was appointed as the lead to review the oil and gas sector. So again, the VBI in the Islamic banking system, of which then also adopted by the entire banking system. Now, with regards to what is differentiated, again, what conventional banks can do in sustainability, Islamic banks can do in sustainability, right? There are 2 points of differentiation. Now, the first one, which we as an industry are focusing on, of course, with the guidance from Bank Negara Malaysia, is Islamic social finance. So these 3 instruments being zakat, or the mandatory alms, wakaf, which is an endowment, and sedekah, donation. So these are the 3 unique social finance instruments that the Islamic banking industry has. And we have done projects as an industry, for example, My Zakat, whereby the banks pull together the zakat money and then provided that money to Amanah Ikhtiar Malaysia, which is an MOF-owned microfinancing institution, for then Amanah Ikhtiar Malaysia to use that zakat funding to provide microfinancing. So a segment that is typically not banked usually by commercial banks is now bankable through the Islamic social finance instrument. Now, the other thing, again, with leadership from Bank Negara Malaysia, of which, again, formalized in the Islamic Financial Services Act, is the investment account. So at CIMB Islamic, we have the investment account for consumers as well as non-consumers, or basically our wholesale and commercial segments. Now, recently for the individual customers, we launched what is called the Daily Unrestricted Investment Account, or for short, Durian I know, catchy. So what Durian I is, it functions like a current account. The difference is we tag it to sustainable assets in our consumer banking loan or financing portfolio. And those sustainable assets would be green mortgages and electric vehicle financing. We also have the same for our commercial banking segment, not an environmental angle, but a social angle tied to SDG 8, which covers the MSMEs. So the sustainable term investment account that we have at 3, 6, and 9-month tenor, similar to a fixed deposit, is tagged to sustainable assets that go towards financing MSMEs. So these are the 2 unique products or areas that Islamic finance adds in addition to what conventional finance can do in sustainability.
Thank you, Arshad. So I'm going to direct the question to Dr. Gary, last but not least. What are the key challenges and opportunities in launching FCC and FCO as mechanism under Article 6?
Thank you very much, Amir, for the question. Article 6, as you know, is currently being negotiated in Baku, specifically two subsections, Article 6.2 and Article 6.4. Very early on, the first day in the COP, quite a bit of consternation about the presidency pushing through a quick decision on one of the Article 6 components. But there are a lot of things that remain to be negotiated in Article 6, and not many people, as we have come to the end of the COP, are confident that these can be fully negotiated before the end of the COP. I will, however, maybe contextualize this a little bit and say that in terms of the 2 instruments, the FCCs and the FCOs, the FCCs are not related in terms of Article 6 because they are a non-market mechanism. They are performance-based payments, and once again, their goal is conservation. So in terms of the benefits, we will be including the non-carbon benefits as well. The idea, like I said, once again, in line with the government's policy to ensure that at least half of the country remains forested, that we are able to meet the nationally determined contribution, the NDC, that we are also in line to achieve the net zero by 2050 target. Now, the FCOs that are still, as I mentioned, in the final stages of preparation, that is possibly where the alignment with Article 6 will come in, because the issues that remain to be negotiated, for example, just give you one example, when do you implement the corresponding adjustment? So if you move emissions reduction, or so-called ITMO, and if you move it overseas by selling it to another party, at which point do you implement that corresponding adjustment? Is it when the sale is made? Is it when the credit is retired, and so on? So then a number of other issues out there tied to environmental integrity, tied to double counting, that still need to be negotiated. But in terms of direction, without a doubt, the FCC, FCO, and the work of the MFF in general are fully aligned with the government's policies and direction. The where I would say that there's still some space for clarification is in the quantum and in the time, because we've got some timelines locked down, 2030, etc. But how much can we generate in terms of income from both of these instruments, and to what extent will they enable us to achieve the goal? I think that a bit more simulation needs to be done, and as we conclude or finalize the FCOs and finally try to get them on the exchange, I think we'll see some progress there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gary. Well, it looks like we have the time has flown faster than expected. I'm looking at the time is looking red than ever. But before we call it a wrap, I'd like to squeeze one last question for each of our panelists. Think of this as your closing statement, short, sweet, and impactful. But I apologize, we are unable to take question from the Slido, but I believe some of the questions have been answered during the presentation, also during the question panel. But please do reach out to the speakers outside later on if you have a specific question to them. So the last question, I probably start with Dr. Gary first. Out of all questions asked to the panel, what is one question that you expected to be asked but not asked, and what the answer will be?
Okay, thanks again. So very quickly, I expected questions about financing from the COP, specifically Article 6, and more specifically Article 6.4, which is the successor of the clean development mechanism, because it's now going to become more of a sustainability mechanism with greater transparency. And since that question was not asked, I don't really have an answer, because once again, the COP just completed. But I think the idea is we want to if we revive something like the CDM, we do want to plug all the loopholes, all the gaps, all the weaknesses in that mechanism to make sure that it functions as we hope. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Gary. This question maybe you can share between Puan and Arshad. If we were going to be in the same place, hopefully 5 years in the future, what will change? What the topic, the discussion will be?
I think we'll still be talking about ESG, but I would also think that the kind of conversation would actually change. So, now we talk a lot about we'll talk a lot about climate, but 5 years down the road, I would expect, or I would like to see that, we talk more about nature and biodiversity, and that's actually going to be very critical, because, climate and nature has to come together, and it's not climate or nature, it's actually both.
5 years from now, by that time, I hope in Malaysia we have carbon pricing mechanisms. So most recently in the budget, the government announced the carbon tax for certain sectors. So we've yet to hear more details on that. So 5 years from now, it would have been fully developed. Now, why is that important from a financial institution perspective? Once there's a price on carbon, it will formally enter our financial models through company financial statements. So that's why 5 years from now, I think we would have a carbon pricing mechanism in Malaysia, be it carbon tax or emissions trading scheme. And with that, by then we would have a domestic compliance market for carbon credits. So the conversation then would be not just the VVBs or the validation and verification bodies for Vera and Gold Standard, but to what Julian had mentioned earlier, the MOC or the Memorandum of Collaboration that was signed in Baku a few days ago, perhaps an interoperable standard for carbon credits within ASEAN to complement what Dr. Gary had mentioned earlier on Article 6, which refers more to outside ASEAN.
We hope to come back on that later on, in 5 years' time, not later on. Okay, last but not least to Mr. Kevin, make it short, make it impactful. What do you hope the audience will take away or feel from our discussion today?
Okay, I'm just going to hook on to one keyword. I think just in terms of insights, I think innovation is key, and it ties closely to ESG as well. As you get on this journey, you would find that innovation tends to come a lot more naturally. A lot more of the companies who are innovating their product roadmap, who are moving in the technology space, have ESG embedded, and it's a foundation that helps them to basically get going. And finally, I think all the banks, we are ready to support whatever is required in terms of development. I think leadership is there already, as we stressed. So we're really looking forward to 2025 and the impact we can do as a whole, as a country.
Thank you, Kevin. And with that, we've reached the end of today's session. I want to sincerely thank our incredible panelists for sharing that time, insight, and experience. It's been truly enlightening. It's not every day we get to hear such valuable perspective, and I'm grateful for the knowledge and inspiration they brought into discussion. Thank you all, and I hope you leave today with fresh idea and new motivation. Have a wonderful day ahead, and also enjoy the rest of the session. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Tuan Amiruddin, for hosting such an amazing session. And to thank all our panelists, can I please invite His Excellency Jacques Werner, the Ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to Malaysia, accompanied by Mr. Dirk Terhut and Mr. Supun Nigamuni up on stage to present our panelists with a token of appreciation. All right, thank you so much, gentlemen. If you'd like to grab a quick photo up front. All right, thank you so much. You may now return to your seats.